Hello everyone, Sientir here with another Rambler for you, and today I want to do an introduction to a series that I plan to run over the course of the next several months. I kind of want to release it on the first Tuesday of each month. This specific series is I want to delve into each of the 7 deadly sins. This is going to be a little bit of an introduction so I can talk a little bit about how I'm going to approach this topic. So, like I said, they're the 7 deadly sins. I want to talk about each of them because I want to try to understand what they're getting at. And a lot of the way that I'm going to approach this is a little bit different than sort of what I would consider a typical approach. For example, when I'm looking at, let's just pick a popular one, lust. I'm going to look at it from an angle not per se directly sexual, but rather what I think some of the underlying drive that leads to lust is. So this is going to be the approach that I plan to take so I can try to understand how these things come about better, or at least a potential sort of route that this can occur. So for this series, like I said, I'm planning on releasing it monthly, starting with the first Tuesday of February is when I want the first one of these to go out, and then, one in March, etc. I'm going to do them in alphabetical order, so envy, then gluttony, then greed, lust, pride, sloth, and wrath. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the concept of the 7 deadly sins before I go into them individually, and that's the bulk of what I'm going to talk about now. This is, as far as I'm aware, a concept that was created probably at some point in time, I don't know, Middle Ages or something. I'm not 100% sure on the exact origins, but it's interesting because it is not a biblical list. There are definitely things talked about in the Bible that you can go to. For example, things about sexual sin are kind of all over the place. Lust gets talked about. Pride gets talked about. Wrath is not talked about necessarily quite the direct way. There's things like, in your anger do not sin, which is different than talking about wrath itself. So this is a list where these things, some of them are spoken about directly in the Bible, but this is not a list that appears in, like, I don't know, some verse where it's like, and this verse is this list of things. That's just not something that occurs. I think a lot of the idea of this, however, of these particular things, is that deadly is maybe not quite the right word, common, or traditional, or frequent, or usual. It makes me think of a particular verse that says, no sin has overtaken you, that which is common to man, or no temptation, rather. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to man, or to human beings, right? To human nature. That the sort of things that become temptations are common among everybody. There's not really a unique thing per se. And I think that also when you look at the verse in James where he gives kind of the life cycle of sin, where it's born from evil desire, etc. Well, where did the evil desires come from? And that's kind of what my examination is going to be. What are because I think that what happens is a genuine, like, good desire or good need gets corrupted into an evil expression or an evil way, and that's where these sins get borne out through that corrupting process. So these 7 then, again, envy, gluttony, greed, lust, pride, sloth, and wrath, are, I think, some of the most common types of sins that many things kind of can fall into these categories. And there's different ways of looking at them as well that are like looking at the words in general or looking at the concepts. For example, gluttony being overeating is typically how it's used. And I'm going to examine it more as consumption, consuming things. But you can also look at it as forms of idolatry, where it's like gluttony is about your stomach and about food. So somebody, for example, anorexia is kind of a form of gluttony in that it makes the focus all about food. C.S. Lewis actually wrote about that in The Great Divorce, if I'm remembering the book title correctly, where it talks about the main character's mother being a glutton because she's so particular about her food and boasting about how little she's eating and things like that, where you have sort of the opposite of what's usually considered, where it's the extremes around a subject that can be the problem, where when you're living for the extreme. So, for example, the greed we usually think of as desiring a lot of things, but if you're trying to legalistically prove your moral purity through self-destitution, maybe that's a form of greed, right? Where you're obsessing about money, you're just obsessing about a lack of money rather than possessing a quantity of money. So that's one approach that you can take and that I've seen taken to kind of examine these things. And I think that there's a lot of value to that approach, but it's not approaching it the way that I'm intending to do it, because what I'm intending to do is to, for example, I brought up lust earlier, what I think is about is a desire for intimacy, because we want to, and intimacy is one of those words that kind of gets distorted as well, but to kind of know each other deeply, or really to be deeply accepted or fully accepted is kind of what I think of with regards to that. Deeply known, fully accepted, that sort of thing. That, I think, is sort of the roots of lust. And I'll go into that more in that particular one. It'll be a while before I get there. But that's how I'm going to approach the topic more, is I'm going to try to find some sort of root, underlying thing that we crave. For example, when I hear wrath, I think about justice. So I'm going to look at it from kind of an approach of what is the good thing that we're wanting, that we're trying to obtain the wrong way, or that we're responding to poorly. So that's what this series is going to be about. And today's probably going to be a little bit shorter, just because there's not a whole lot necessarily to say before I go into them. And I'm not sure how long these ones are going to end up being. They may be a little bit briefer, but I hope you'll be okay with that. Make them quicker to listen to, I suppose. So that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for me today. I look forward to this series. I hope that I learn a lot through it. I hope that you can learn a lot through it too. It's probably going to be a little bit more rambly as well, just from the standpoint that I'm going to sort of prefigure out what I think the underlying thing is, but then I'm going to kind of ramble around it as I kind of feel my way out to the implications and how it kind of manifests and works and why I think it's that and that sort of thing. So until then, until next time, which should be envy, take care, everyone. And if you can like me on Facebook at facebook.com/Sientir. You can email me directly if you want to at sientir@gmail.com. And you can support me financially at patreon.com/Sientir. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.